Welcome to Product Coffee. We have got a really interesting discussion about how you might be thinking about evolving your approach to product management, to product development, to innovation, to your career today. But before we do that, we're going to jump in with our first cup panel and have a little bit of an old school conversation. I want to start with right here in the studio with me. I want to welcome back Misha Sulpovar. Misha is the Chief AI Officer at Foley, and you've got more grand pianos than the house can hold.
Exactly 0 grand pianos.
Oh, at this point, you have unloaded them all.
I've never had a grand piano.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have an upright and I have a clavichord.
Okay. More pianos. And you've got one in storage, I thought, didn't you?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Well, there goes my research. I'm out for the day. But he used to play keys for a funk band called Hazard to Your Booty.
That's right.
That one I got, and that's not a bit. That's on the record. So of everything swirling around, context, agents, and the rest of it, all that aside, what's got your attention this week?
I've been thinking a lot about distillation and context distillation. That's recency bias because we just released a context distillation library. So very torn because it's amazing and it's also a little buggy.
I don't even know what a context distillation library is. I mean, I kind of do, but I mean,
Yeah. Well, so we'll talk a lot about context today.
Yep.
But context distillation is being able to take a bunch of context and then distill it into enough for agents and people to start working with and stewarding around, and then creating the mechanisms to keep it updated.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And then up next, we've got Nandu Shah. Nandu, you built a seismograph for fun, and you run the Atlanta CTO Club, and you once told me that birds are terrible parents, which I honestly still not over. So of everything you could be watching right now, what's got the hooks in you? I didn't even ask you. I didn't even prep you with an article. I just said, what do you want to talk about this week?
Yeah, I've become too predictable if you're not even going to ask me a question to start. So I'll work on that. But I mean, what has my attention this week is something that's had my attention for a long time, and that is Cunningham's law. The fastest way to get the right answer on the internet isn't to pose a question at all, but to post the wrong answer. And right now, getting answers is easier and faster than I've ever seen, right? Like we can generate lots of answers, but how do we know which ones are right? And then what do we do with them? How do we know which ones are wrong? And then what do we do about it? So I'm happy to talk more about that, but
Tell me more.
keep going on, sir. Yeah. So one of the most recently, I was curious, there's been a lot of headlines on what's happening in mathematics with AI right now. And some of those piqued my curiosity. And I thought, well, just a year or two ago, AI LLMs everyone knew they were bad at math. They couldn't count the number of letters in strawberry, the number of R's in strawberry and things like that. And they couldn't do basic arithmetic. So what fundamentally changed? And the thing is, nothing has changed about the LLMs, but formal representation and verification of proofs is what has been really crucial to the recent developments. And so there's a language called Lean, and the latest version is Lean, and it's basically a formal language for expressing mathematical proofs. And the compiler for this language is a proof checker. So an LLM can generate all kinds of alleged proofs, but get immediate feedback on whether or not it's a valid proof.
Okay.
That coupled with a lot of community work to build an open source library of proofs has accelerated some of the work in math. But fundamental to that is the proof checker, knowing which answers are wrong. But as individual humans using LLMs for whatever we're using them for, what other tools, what other methods and approaches do we have to filter out the wrong answers?
Cool. I just feel like I got a little smarter. We are going deep today with the technical expertise and the math expertise and I threw those out and I did not know what to expect. So for those of you who are just joining, what we've always done at Product Coffee, when we started Product Coffee, the first half hour was just what has your attention. And it's a great opportunity for you to introduce yourself, get to know people in the room, hear what people are thinking about, what they're focused on. So I want to encourage you, if you're in the Zoom with us, turn on your camera. We're going to hear what other people are thinking about here, and we'd love to hear what you're thinking about. And it does not have to be math proofs, and it does not have to be context distillation yet. But we do want to hear from you and what's got your attention, what's on your mind these days. I'm going to jump over next to my buddy Cavelle. And Cavelle, you keep Granger's inventory products humming, and you write angel checks on the side, and you're sitting in Bulgaria this morning. So you're seeing products from both ends and all over the world. What are you going to build? What are you going to bet on? Where are you going to do it? What's got your attention right now?
Something interesting. So I did recently change roles. That's another thing that's changed.
Oh, okay.
So I am responsible for our product information tools internally, effectively the tooling around taxonomy and merchandising and other things that help us get our products onto our website and other publishing. A big push for not just my team, but across the organization is better leverage of AI. And so there are kind of two things. One is the domain context discussion. I actually gave a talk at our internal tech conference 2.5 weeks ago. And there's always a question of how do you make sure the context within your domain is correct? And how do you make sure you're ingesting the right context? So I'm looking forward to today's chat. The other thing is, if everybody's been using Claude or Fable 5, you probably have noticed some very interesting ways it responds. It used to be sycophantic, and now it does the honest answer is. So I've been tinkering with more structured ways of requiring thinking for the models, as well as how it responds. For example, there is a document around standard technical English that I've been reviewing and forcing the models to respond using that. And as well as, there are standards for certain words and sentence structure at certain reading levels, and forcing the models to respond that way, although they may think much bigger and using other tools, and seeing how consistent we get. I'm actually seeing responses back from other team members using that. They actually are saying the models are responding much better. They feel like they're actually getting better artifacts that they can use for product. And for everyone's benefit, most of the stuff that I focus on is before coding. I've been on a mission to try and get better structure around all the work leading up to coding, because being clear about what the problem is and being clear about the value that we will create with the code that we create is a big thing for me. And so I want to make sure that we have good tools that people can pick up and start using quickly.
Very good. Thinking about language levels and communication levels, I still have to ask it to explain things to me like I'm a fifth grader sometimes. But have you and I tried a few weeks ago just for kicks on trying to get that over verbosity cut down. I tried the Caveman plugin in Claude Code. Have any of you guys tried that?
Yeah.
That was quite entertaining. So it's this plugin that you add to Claude Code, and it literally just starts stripping every extra word out of the response. So it's very brief, very concise, and gets rid of a lot of that. Well, the honest truth is, and I've got to own this one.
Yeah. And I've actually been pushing on lineage and citation as well. Like, you don't get to say the honest answer. It's virtue signaling, and you actually need to cite your sources, and you have to cite your sources using APA or whatever formal structure. Like, forcing that is giving me some pretty interesting answers, and the model starts to operate a little differently. I just put the language piece. It's actually a European standard, but that's what I've been using as a starting point with the models.
Very cool. All right. Last and certainly not least from our prepared panel, who came in all ready to talk about what has their attention, Steve wrote the book on product growth, and you probably coach half the product managers in the room, and you still make time for the guitar. So when someone who's seen this much says something has their attention, people lean in. So what is it, Steve?
Well, I feel in so many ways that I'm learning computing all over again. I've been doing my own coding of an assessment app, and have had a couple of interesting experiences with the app saying, I really think you want this feature, and me going, wait, do I want that feature? And it's so easy to say, yes, yeah, a heat map would be cool. Yes, a dashboard would be cool. But in so many ways, I find it is pushing me ever more back into my correct role as the product manager, or the business representative of what is it I'm trying to accomplish here. And then somewhere related to that, I'm thinking as well of Chesterton's fence. Never take down a fence until you know why it was put there. And I feel like we're, as an industry, throwing away 50 years of experience and saying, screw it. We've all got Claude code. We can all be putting stuff into production. And I'm like, hang on. There's a lot of discipline that we've built up in DevOps over the years. And I don't want some rando from product management posting something to production. So let's not take those fences down until we know why they're there.
I think that's a really good way of thinking about the fences and the roles and the constraints that we have in place. Even when it's cheap or free to deploy code, there's still a cost. There's added complexity, both from the potentially for the user, but also to the code base. That yes, you can fix it cheap or free, but you don't necessarily know you need to fix it until you find a problem. So saying that whole keeping that focused and keeping constrained on the right thing to do, the right thing to prioritize is still a valuable skill, even though the cost appears to go down depending on how you calculate the cost of deploying code.
Depends on how you measure the value, right?
Exactly.
Like, I think the statistics I've seen is that we're seeing across the board, the median is a % improvement in velocity in engineering teams. So the deployment of code, PRs, lines of code, however you want to measure it. But if you take a value metric, that's either gone down,
Right.
or has stayed just about the same, which is puzzling to me.
Well,
Shouldn't
it
happen.
goes back to Steve's really fond of saying we can deliver a lot of crap faster.
Yeah, that's right. That's
The-
what it is.
So maintaining that discipline. All right. Thanks for helping us start up the conversation. Let's look out at the folks here in the Zoom room. Everybody who's here, once again, I challenge you to turn on your camera, join us, get to know some folks, and let's jump over and say hi to some folks that we haven't seen in a while. Let's start with Andy Bowden. Hey, Andy, how are you? Welcome back. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody what's got your attention.
Hi, everyone. Andy Bowden. I am currently a former head of product from a small startup data storage company. I'm located in Houston, near people like Peter Zimmer, who's on. We hang out together every now and then at product camps around the state of Texas. What's on my mind, a lot of things. Currently doing a lot of trying to get into more fractional stuff as I talk to a lot of people, a lot of prospective clients. They all have a very similar problem that we probably have discussed, or I know I come in and out of the product copy area, but they have trouble scaling. And inevitably, they're stuck in a professional services world. All they're doing is customized work for a very limited number of customers, and they can't figure out how they can sell their product to a much broader audience. And so I try to help them, as I've done in a couple of my previous roles, to make something what I'll call more transactionable and more repeatable. And it's a journey, right? So that's between that and a lot of AI stuff that like Steve has talked about, a lot of that's on my mind, and a lot of that goes together. And I try to incorporate that, how AI can help others with their product, and not to make AI the product, to make it the product better and make the outcome for the customer better. And there's a lot of discussions I know I have here in Houston and Austin tech companies around that, but that's what's on my mind is helping make the complexity simple.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, welcome back. Glad to have you. Andy and I caught up yesterday in the car, so glad you're stationary this morning.
Yep.
All right. And let's switch over to Stephen Ricks. Hey, Stephen. Good morning. What's got your attention?
Morning. You caught me a little brain fried this morning, so as I'm working on pitching a 5-year product vision at my company currently and trying to get a deployment out the door, and my head of QA is leaving. And
Oh my goodness.
it's just, it's that week. But no, I'm actually, so kind of like Steve was alluding to, one of the other things I'm working through here right now is what is the appropriate way for teams outside of product dev to be using tools like Base 44 or other AI coding tools. We've seen some other people in the company make some like genuinely interesting and impressive. I would struggle to even call them prototypes. It's functional product. But I actually pulled up, Steve, your recent LinkedIn post on AI makes it easier to build the wrong thing. We're just trying to have those conversations right now. But I'm digging into that, digging into the world of finance with our product vision. And Steve, if you're into guitars, I'm a luthier in my other job. So maybe we should start a guitar interest group in product coffee.
Definitely.
I'm now going to Google luthier, or you can tell me what that is.
I build and repair instruments.
Nice.
I had a horrible dream last night that my Martin D35 disintegrated. And I don't know where that came from, but it's like, not that one. I mean, I have other guitars that can disintegrate, but not.
Hey, it's all just wood. Some of it's expensive wood, but it's all just wood.
Yeah.
Some of it's expensive and very old wood. I wonder.
Yet another thing
Yep.
we're all learning to do. Anybody can play a record, but it's really hard to play an instrument. Anybody can do some Base 44 app, but it's not ready for production.
Nandu has a great phrase, and I'll tee him up on this one, that anywhere can write some code, but writing code is not the same as being an engineer.
I've had that conversation with quite a few folks. I think about it like anybody can make soup, but you cannot make anybody well necessarily.
That's a good one too. We're going to have lots of
Yeah, I think-
t-shirts. The Printful account is going to get loaded up here.
I think maybe coffee mugs might also be on brand.
And there we go.
But as far as, I mean, that I think we've circled the same thing a number of times, right? The difference between coding and engineering, Steve's take, my take on Cunningham's law, right? Another one, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, all product development, you can distill it down to, you can have anything you want. You can't have everything you want. And we are now in like the biggest glut of having anything we want ever. But so what?
I am reminded from that statement, Nandu, years ago, I saw an interview with Jim Carrey when he was coming out of he had a really rough time for a little while, and he was coming out of it. And he told the interview, he said, I hope that everybody in their life gets a chance to have everything that they want so they can find out it's not all that great.
Yeah. Isn't that the lesson of Bruce Almighty?
Yeah, it is. It really is. Let's switch over to DJ. How are you, my friend? Welcome back. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us what has your attention today? I'm going to bring you off mute. I think it might be your mic.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi, guys. Yep. I'm DJ Patel. I was product manager at Wellstar. Due to restructuring, I'm in the market again right now. So what I have my attention is I got several interviews lined up. Tomorrow I have 3 of them. So let's see where it goes. I have some in the oven for round 2 now as well. And, you were talking about what you just mentioned, Jason. One thing, or Nandu, you were mentioning about you can have everything you want, and everybody's getting too many things right now. The problem I was seeing at Wellstar was we were having an issue with adoption. Nobody was adopting all these features and benefits. Like we were launching Copilot Studio agents like nobody's business, but yet there was problem with system folks, leaders were not adopting all the features. So we had to gamify it, and that was a cool initiative I was in the middle of when the restructuring happened. But yeah, we came up with a bingo game. So anybody ever has issue where they want to talk about how they can, use some sort of game system, coming up with the basic games that you can reward your user base to adopt your technology so that you can show the value of what you have implemented. Maybe we can talk more about it offline.
Excellent. Cool. Welcome. And if anybody else wants to flip their camera on here, we've got a couple more minutes for another introduction or two. Would love to have you. Or if you would like to introduce yourself and let us know what has your attention, you can just raise your hand if you can't come on camera for whatever reason. I'll tell you, I got a lot of things on my mind these days. We're ramping into product camp season and ramping up that engine. I hope if you're in the Atlanta area, you can join us at Product Camp Atlanta on November 13th. And we are still looking for volunteers to lead some of the teams on that effort. And a lot of you have signed up to volunteer, and we're still reaching out to you on those as well. But I've had quite a few things that are kind of cycling through, and we're going to touch on it a little bit in our conversation with Misha in a minute. But a lot of what we've been circling around in this conversation is our ability to create things is empowering, but it's also creating lots of challenges. And I had lots of conversations last week at our happy hour with people who have built something, they've vibe coded something, they've created something, maybe a prototype, they may even have it pretty well burned in, but they're trying to think, but they're asking the question, I think I might have a product here. So what do I do next? And we're flipping the traditional instructing or the taught, the disciplined product management approach of identifying a problem and identifying a market that has that problem and building a solution for that market. And we're starting with ourselves and finding something that we just care about and building something that solves a problem for us, and then seeing if there's a market there. It's going a little bit flipped from the true enterprise product management vision or approach. And I find myself wondering, how do we help people that are in that situation where you've solved a problem for yourself or are close to solving a problem for yourself, discover a market and build some product discipline around this little solo operation? More and more people are doing that. And Steve, yeah, I was actually going to pivot right over to you and ask you, what's the advice that you're inclined to give people?
Well, I think that's where most products come from. The first product for a company is almost always some problem the founder had, and they represented the persona. They leveraged their technical skills, perhaps, or they brought in a friend who had the technical skills. And the first product almost always a success or not. The thing that's scary is we don't see the 99 companies that failed. The founder who said, well, I'm going to start my own business. And then a year later, their spouse says, time for you to go get a real job. But, the success stories are always that first thing was just brilliant. And then if you watch that company, the second product isn't quite as successful. And often the third one is a freaking disaster. And what I've seen happen is the founder was the persona. And then after that, they are separated from the market. They are remembering what it used to be 3 or 4 or 8 years ago when they were whatever, when they were the job. And now they're running a company. It's an entirely different set of experiences. The first product, I think, is very close to the customers. And I think the second product is very close to the salespeople. And so already the founder is one level separated from customers. And I think that's what it is. And I've had many conversations over the years where companies, where product managers or founders or whoever says, so we finished this product. Can you help me market it? Can you help me find customers for it? And I'm like, wow, you're doing it backwards. You start with the market and the problem and the kind of people who have that problem, and then you go forward. And they're like, oh, I have no idea who actually has this problem. And so how can you have finished the product?
Yeah. What you built for yourself, that initial problem you solved, it's still a prototype, no matter how polished it is, until you found the market.
Indeed.
Yeah. That's cool. CB, Cavelle, you've got your hand up. Let's go.
Yeah, I think oftentimes to pile on to what Steve was saying, it's not just, I would say, in addition to identifying the problem and the outcomes that folks are focused on, be it you're the person who's executing the job or you're the buyer, but like, are you clear on who benefits from the tools that you're building or the software that you're building, regardless of who uses it? There are some great books around jobs to be done, and they talk about how a lot of folks, when you talk about the medical industry or even Apple, right? Apple eliminated a whole class of technology with the introduction of the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And now your phone, your computer, your camera, everything is in one device because they decided to think a little bit bigger. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of companies to do because they are chasing the deal. They are chasing I got to close this thing and get the revenue, as opposed to what is the 20-mile march that I need to do that is going to help me be sustainable.
That's great. That's a great way to land the plane on our first cup. I want to thank Cavelle, Steve, Nandu, and Misha for helping us kick it off this morning. Thank you very much to all of you. I hope you can stick around for our main session today. So I was having a conversation with Misha Sulpovar, who is the Chief AI Officer at Foley. and also the founder of Prompt Owl. And we were talking about some realizations and some evolutions in thinking about several different roles and how we approach our work in general. And when we had this conversation, I registered this concept of context steward in kind of a different way than I had before. And so I asked Misha if we could come talk about this notion of context stewardship and how we as individuals, as product professionals, might think about the delineation that you're making between context stewards and builders in a mindset and in a practice, and what that means to you. So why don't we start just by talking about what a context steward is and what a builder is from your perspective, related to how we traditionally think about our roles at work.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some context is helpful. So, and it's good we kicked off by talking about the drift of where things get built through the organization, because I think it's very pertinent. For me, I've been on this journey for a while. And I started way back in the day with data science and machine learning, but I've been in LLM land for 3 years now, or in change, right? And the thesis that I had a few years ago to think about this as a language innovation, frame it as a language innovation, and anchor the frameworks around that led me to emphasize the importance in my own mental model of governance and the shift of kind of the supply and demand ecosystem. So being a recovering product manager from back in the day, the agile and product management for me, like if you zoom out, there's a big part of it that's managing the imbalance of supply and demand. So it used to be where the demand for software far outstripped the supply. So we created all of these rituals, prioritizations, and ways to manage projects to de-risk waste, to prioritize the most valuable work. And the thesis for me a couple of years ago, I started to feel like the balance was going to shift. So the demand is going to far outstrip the supply in software, which is going to have profound impacts on not just how we build software, but SaaS models in general. And we've seen some of that start to play out in very, very big ways. And we're talking about, you're meeting folks that are vibe coding products, and we're seeing folks using Base 44. So if somebody had mentioned, or other vibe coding tools at work that are going way past prototype and they're going into working software. And then we have this instinct to then start to think about, okay, well, what does it mean to actually be working software, and how do we put rails around that so that it fits sometimes, so that it fits into the mental model that we have. The other way to frame that is, how does that have to change? How does the organization have to change for us to respond to a reality where the demand is far outstripped by the supply? I think that's where we're at too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's so much software getting produced. It's incredibly overwhelming. Like, the scarce thing now is attention,
Right.
and taste.
Right.
Okay, so if attention and taste are what's important, and if the building of tools and software starts to become democratized, then where you start to a lot of the systems that are getting built are built. You have your markdowns, you have your product framing, and all of that. We can talk about what context is, but all of that. Let's say you have in a context layer, and that's what's driving the production of the software, the responses of agents, and all of that kind of thing, right? The governance of those contexts then gets in that ecosystem gets upgraded, I think, and the attention you pay to managing that context becomes increasingly important.
Yeah, and it's always been important, but as you pointed out, this expansion of who can create things to use that knowledge, that context, that information, everything that we've got, it's blown up so fast that making sure that we have things in a usable structure is critically important to unlock that, but it's also critically important to make sure that we're using the right things for our focus.